Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be continuing looking through old newspaper articles. This very first one is from 1872 called Ancient Ruins. The South African explorer Karl Mach visited the ruins of an ancient mysterious city in the highland between the Zambezi and Limpopo rivers. Long known by natives reports to the Portuguese, and situated in a land which from its gold and ivory has long been identified by some authorities as the Ophir of Scripture. One portion of the ruins rises upon a granite hill about 4,000 feet in relative height. The other, separated by a slight valley, lies upon a somewhat raised terrace. From the curved and zigzag form still apparent in the ruined walls, which cover the whole of the western declivity of the hill, these have formed a once impregnable fortress. The whole space is densely overgrown with nettles and bushes, and some great trees have intertwined their roots with the buildings. Without exception, the walls, some of which have still a height of 30 feet, are built of cut granite stone, generally of the size of an ordinary brick, but no mortar has been seen. The thickness of the walls where they appear above ground is 10 feet, tapering to 7 or 8 feet above. In many places, monolith pilasters of 8 to 10 feet in length, ornamented in diamond-shaped lines, stand out of the building. It is thought that they are ruins of a factory raised in a very remote antiquity by strangers in the land to overawe the savage inhabitants of the region and serve as a depot for that gold and ivory it affords. No native, mud hut dwelling tribe could have conceived its erection. Okay, so that is from South Africa. Big ruins using bricks with no mortar in a densely overgrown jungle. Okay, this next one is from 1911. Institute at Washington, who made the long journey. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Let me get up here. Arizona man won't sell skeleton of his prehistoric giant. Prescott, Arizona. I've been there. October 16th. Peter Marks of Walnut Creek, discoverer of the skeleton of a prehistoric human giant on his farm several weeks ago while in the city yesterday, stated that the curiosity is attracting such deep interest in scientific circles that he is almost deluged with letters, and during the past 2 weeks he has been visited by Mr. and Mrs. Shroop, the former an attaché of the Smithsonian Institute at Washington. Okay, the Smithsonian, they take all the stuff. Who made the long journey especially for the purpose of viewing the frame of the giant of other days. Mr. Shroop was provided with photographic instruments and took several pictures of the freak. He also desired to take it to Washington, but this request was held up by Mr. Marks until later, and after he ascertains whether Arizona desires it for its probable state museum. In that event, it will be donated. Mr. Marks stating that as the subject was found in the territory, it should be kept here. Mr. Shoup was very much interested in those portions of the human frame that were intact, particularly the skull, which indicated that the giant was of such abnormal size as to be beyond comprehension. Okay, where did I go? As that of a human being. Mr. Marks has uncovered another Aztec burying ground near the point where the skeleton was found, but all skeletons dug up are normal in size and attract but little attention, only a small number being found. An old irrigating ditch has also been partly uncovered, and it is Mr. Shoup's belief that the place was intelligently cultivated in some past age by an industrious people. Mr. Marks has uncovered many implements, some of which are unique in construction, and for what purposes they were utilized is problematical. Okay, so we have another case of a giant skeleton in the US that the Smithsonian tries to come in and get. Okay, this one now is 1831. Let's get up to the top. We take at random from the entertaining work on ancient and modern Egypt, noticed yesterday, a passage respecting the ancient Thebes, a city which, in an age of which we have no authentic account, and in a country which was among the cradles of civilization, attained the circumference of 27 miles, a magnitude equal to that of our greatest modern capitals, while in the solidity and splendor of its remaining constructions it far exceeds even imperial Rome itself. The following paragraph, extracted from the work of Denon, the friend and companion of Bonaparte, is sufficiently striking. At 9 o'clock, in making a sharp turn round a projecting point, we discovered all at once the site of the ancient Thebes in its whole extent. This celebrated city, the size of which Homer has characterized with the single expression of the 100 gates, a boasting and poetical phrase which has been repeated with so much confidence for so many centuries, this illustrious city, described in a few pages dictated to Herodotus by Egyptian priests, that have since been copied by every historian, celebrated by the number of its kings, whose wisdom has raised them to the rank of gods, by laws which have been revered without being promulgated, by science, involved in pompous and enigmatical inscriptions, the first monuments of ancient learning which are still spared by the land of time. This abandoned sanctuary, surrounded with barbarism, and again restored to the desert from which it had been drawn forth, enveloped in the veil of mystery and the obscurity of ages, whereby even its own colossal monuments are magnified to the imagination, still impressed the mind with such gigantic phantoms that the whole army suddenly and with one accord stood in amazement at the sight of its scattered ruins, and clapped their hands with delight, as if the end and object of their glorious toils and the complete conquest of Egypt were accomplished and secured by taking possession of this ancient metropolis. Another traveler, less enthusiastic than Denon, describes the effect of a first sight in the following terms: quote, "While I was leisurely traveling along, thinking only of our arrival at Luxor, one of the party who had preceded us called to me from a rising ground to turn to the left, and having gone a few yards off the road, I beheld unexpectedly the temple of Karnak. It was long after I reached my tent ere I recovered from the bewilderment into which the view of these stupendous ruins had thrown me. No one who has not seen them can understand the awe and admiration they excite even in unscientific beholders. When I compare the descriptions of Denon and Hamilton, I find them essentially correct, yet without giving me any adequate idea of the glorious reality. They fail in describing what has never been, and which, I think, never can be described. No words can impart a perfect conception of the profusion of pillars, standing, prostrate, inclining against each other, broken and whole; stones of a gigantic size propped up by pillars, and pillars again resting upon stones, which appear ready to crush the gazer under their sudden fall. Yet, on a second view, he is convinced that nothing but an earthquake could move them. All these pillars, covered with sculpture, perhaps 3,000 years old, though fresh as if finished but yesterday, not of grotesque and hideous objects such as we are accustomed to associate with ideas of Egyptian mythology, but many of the figures of gods, warriors, and horses, much larger than life, yet exhibiting surpassing beauty and grace. So that was one of the first journeys to Egypt. And let's see, ancient remains, animal mounds, etc. in Wisconsin. The last number of Silliman's Journal contains an interesting paper on the above subject, with illustrated plates. The remains of past ages and nations who, for all that we can discover, have long since passed away from the earth, have attracted the attention of scientific men, and that researchers are not without interest to common readers. Whether they are the works of the lost tribes or of other nations can never be satisfactorily determined. Our whole country is filled with them, especially the western and southern parts of it. Human skulls discovered in the mounds prove that they did not belong to ancestors of our Indian tribes, but who these were, who were born merely to die and leave only a trace to prove their existence, cannot be discovered. Hundreds of these mounds are found up on the banks of the Wisconsin River. They bear too many marks of art to allow for one moment that they should be considered the work of chance. Figures of men and other animals, from 100 to 500 feet in length, have been traced out, and figures of them are given in Silliman's Journal. But the most astonishing of all are the so-called ruins of Aztalan, which, says Mr. Taylor, a few years ago had its day, and in a measure shared the fate of the notorious moon hoax in the press of our country. Mr. Taylor gives the following extract of a letter from a friend residing near the ruins. The ruins you particularly refer to are to be found in the midst of a beautiful rolling country, conveniently interspersed with timber and watered by Rock River and its tributaries. The principal remains, or what has been termed the walled city, is situated in Township 7 of Range 14 East in the Milwaukee Land District. I know not that a better idea of the present appearance of the ruins can be conveyed than by the accompanying sketch, prepared some time since by Judge N.F. Heyer, a gentleman who has taken much interest in reference to this subject, and to whom I am indebted for the much interesting matter respecting the same during a hasty ramble over the embankment and mounds, and through the immediately adjacent country. The drawing is faithfully executed. The citadel, as there represented, consists of a brick wall, which at the base is from 20 to 25 feet wide at the present time, and I should judge about 5 feet in height. The projections of the wall indicated upon the plat have certainly the appearance of buttresses, as constructed upon military works at this day. They are constructed also of brick, regularly built at intervals of from 2 to 5 rods, and extending beyond the wall about 17 feet, of the same height as the main wall. The eastern wall, parallel with and immediately upon the bank of the river, is, at this time, but slightly visible, nor are there any appearances of buttresses, as upon the supposition that these are the ruins of ancient fortifications, we may conclude that, inasmuch as the eastern side was defended from egress by a deep and rapid stream, a wall and buttresses similar to the ones I have attempted to describe as bounding the western side would have been unnecessary. The whole area within the wall comprises about 20 acres. Within the enclosure are a number of square mounds or elevated plains of the height of 15 or 20 feet, as I should judge, and perhaps 40 or 50 feet square upon the top, while others are of a more conical shape, and from their situation appear as what might now be termed blockhouses, or places of lookout. That such were the objects of their construction, I am not prepared to say. There is also a distinct ridge running east and west, connecting two of these towers or mounds, as well as two parallel ridges running north and south, and extending nearly the whole length of the enclosure. There is also a cellar and stairway, I am informed visible, descending within the mound of the northwestern angle of the ruins. This, in my hurried examination, escaped my notice. I can, therefore, say nothing respecting it. The same remarks must also apply to the termination of a sewer, which is said yet to be perceived at a bend or angle about midway in the eastern wall, designated on the plat above referred to. This sewer is said to be about 3 feet below the surface and arched with stone. Whether through this sewer water was supplied from the river or not, others can judge. Without the enclosure, and at those points where this work is not protected by the river, are numerous mounds varying from 3 to 25 feet in height and from 20 to 100 feet in circumference, and particularly at the southwest angle, there is an embankment forming that are of a circle, with projections resembling the buttresses in the main wall, which it requires but a little stretch of the imagination to suppose was intended as an outwork for the defense of that particular point. In examining one of these mounds, I found the remains of a human skeleton which had been previously exhumed, although by the action of fire the bones were so completely charred that they readily crumbled to pieces in the hand. I preserved a small piece of the skull, but have somewhere mislaid it, or would now send it to you. One word as to the brick wall. Let me not be understood to say that there is in the brick here found any regular appearance of bricklaying as at present practised. The walls which I examined, and from which, at many different points with a mattock, I broke off specimens, present now the appearance of a mass of burnt clay. In what manner at first constructed, there is nothing to indicate, but that the walls and parapets consist of brick rudely burnt and prepared with straw, after the ancient mode. The different specimens, I gather, bear sufficient witness. So yeah, they were doing some major building stuff, highly technological in their constructions, not just over in Egypt, but also in America. Okay, the final one, the ancient Etruscans, and this is from 1843. The ancient Etruscans. Although the sagacity and learning of modern antiquaries and philologists have enabled them to break down the barriers which concealed from us the wonders of Egypt, of Babylon, and of India, and have enabled the scholar to unravel the mysterious language and characters in which they have for ages been hidden, there remains in the heart of Europe innumerable monuments, works of art, and inscriptions of a nation which flourished 1,000 years before the Christian era, which furnished some of the earliest kings of Rome, and which became extinct in the 4th century before the Christian era. We allude to the Etruscans. Numerous as are the inscriptions in their language, it still remains enveloped in obscurity. Not the least clue to it has yet been discovered. Not a single word can be read. What makes this more remarkable is that the letters of our alphabet, the Roman, are formed from them and have the same value, so that anyone may spell the words without difficulty on the monuments of Etruria, and yet not know their meaning. Among the proper names are frequently met with some familiar tones in Roman history. The whatever of Europe have in vain tried to make out the language of Etruria. Various theories have been proposed, but when subjected to a rigid test, they all fall to the ground. During the past year, a new claimant has arisen who pretends to have discovered the true key to this long-lost language, by which it may be read with great facility. Among the numerous remains of this nation are a number of bronze plates filled with inscriptions. These were discovered about a century ago in one of the tombs which have been opened near one of the ancient cities. The inscriptions were deeply cut in regular lines, the letters were well formed, and as perfect as though made but yesterday. These plates, which are known by the name of the Ejubian tables, are the materials on which Sir William Betham, a distinguished Irish antiquarian, has built his theory. The language, he says, in which they are written is the Old Irish, as read and spoken some 10 to 1500 years before the Christian era. He gives an exact translation of every word and line, and the whole put together makes out the following history, as brief as we can give it. A maritime expedition was fitted out in Etruria for trading purposes. This expedition sailed along the Mediterranean coast, passed through the Straits of Gibraltar, followed the coast to the north, describing the country as they passed along until they came to Ireland, where they entered a certain harbor and communicated with the people of the country. The tablets embrace several hundred lines and give all the particulars of the... Darn it. I don't know if I have the second part of this. Let's see. No, I don't. Well, that'll be the last part of that. Unfortunately, it cuts off. I did not know. Oh, wait, here it goes. With a full share of political fancies to make up the narrative. But the learned author is not content to claim as his countrymen the ancient nation of Etruria, a nation which flourished before the destruction of Troy, but he also says the ancient Carthaginians spoke Irish too, and with equal facility he read Punic inscriptions through his native language. His work displays considerable ingenuity, and there cannot be a doubt but that he is perfectly correct in this theory, if the language he calls Old Irish is so. It is here the doubt lies, for the language he calls Old Irish is unknown to others. A previous work by the same author on the origin of the Irish and Welsh, entitled The Gael and the Cimbri, is one of learning and research. The Phoenician inscriptions found at Carthage and other ports of the Mediterranean have been deciphered by Yacinius through the Hebrew, to which language the Phoenicians was closely allied. All the known inscriptions in that language were collected by that learned man and published with translations a few years before his death. So we got the end of that. A lot of this goes back to the Old Irish. One of my words, my prophetic words, was Isle of Man. I don't know. Do we have some ancient race that came down after the last destruction and helped restart civilization? And they came from maybe the North Pole or up by Old Irish, the Isles. I don't know. But if you have any information, please share it down in the comments below. And thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.